The cowboy showed her why she still mattered. She'd believed she had no reason to go on. The stars were not kind tonight. They hung low over the rusted metal of the relay station, blinking weakly, as if the universe itself was too tired to shine. Alara Voss sat on the edge of the observation deck, her legs dangling over the edge of the platform. The wind, or whatever passed for wind on this forgotten planet, whistled through the gaps in the station walls. It carried with it the faint smell of scorched metal and dust from the surrounding desert plains. She had been here for months, or maybe years. Time was meaningless on the frontier, especially when the only company you had were old circuits and memories you couldn't fix. Once she had worked on systems that connected entire star clusters. Her code had shaped the routes that traders, miners, and explorers relied on. But that was before the collapse, before the networks failed, leaving her and everyone else stranded in silence. Alara sighed and pressed her palm against the cold metal. The station hummed faintly beneath her fingertips, a reminder that she was still alive. She had nothing else to remind her of that anymore. Nothing and no one. The door hissed behind her. She didn't turn at first. She rarely had visitors these days. But then she heard the faint clink of boots on metal and a calm voice that didn't belong to the wind. "Station still standing?" Alara looked up and saw a figure leaning casually against the doorframe. He was tall, lean, with a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed most of his face. His coat was patched with mismatched materials, some glowing faintly with embedded circuitry. A tool belt hung at his side, filled with strange gadgets and glowing implements. And on his back, slung like an old relic, was a sleek spacecraft, small but powerful-looking. "I'm guessing you don't belong here," Alara said, her voice sharper than she intended. "I don't belong anywhere," he said, tipping his hat. "Name's Cal Rook. I deliver messages." "Here?" She raised an eyebrow. "No one's been sending messages to this station for years." "Exactly." He grinned faintly, stepping inside. "I like to go where no one else dares. Someone has to keep the old routes alive, right?" Alara studied him. He was not imposing. He carried no weapons. There was no threat, and yet she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. "What do you want?" she asked cautiously. "Maybe a little help." He set down a small battered case on the table. "Ship needs repairs. Nothing major, just routine maintenance. Thought I'd see if anyone around here still remembers how to handle a plasma engine." Alara didn't answer. She didn't want to. But she also didn't have the energy to argue. Slowly, she nodded and motioned toward the workshop area. As they worked, she noticed how methodical he was. Calm, patient, precise. Every move he made seemed simple but purposeful, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. And when he spoke, it was never about himself. He asked questions about the station, about her, about the old network. Not out of curiosity alone, but because he genuinely listened. "You're still good at this," he said at one point, handing her a glowing wire. "Most people would have given up a long time ago. But you notice things others miss." Alara laughed softly, almost bitterly. "I'm just trying not to break anything else," he shrugged. "Fair enough, but maybe there's more to your skills than just fixing machines. Maybe there's a reason you're still here." The word struck her, though she didn't show it. A reason? She had long ago convinced herself that she had none. She was a remnant of the past, like the station itself, a ghost in a forgotten system. By the time the repairs were done, the night had deepened. Outside, the stars sparkled faintly and the desert plains stretched endlessly under their cold light. Cal packed his tools and stood, brushing off his coat. "Before I leave," he said, "there's something I want you to see." He pulled a small sealed device from his bag. It looked like a flat piece of metal no larger than her hand with faint grooves etched into its surface. "A map," he said simply. "Or maybe a memory." "I'm not sure, but it's yours if you want it," Alara frowned. "Mine? Why would I need just touch it?" he interrupted gently. "It responds to the right person." She hesitated. Something inside her stirred, a long-forgotten curiosity, a faint pulse of hope she thought she had lost. Tentatively, she placed her hand on the device. Immediately, the grooves began to glow, and a soft hum filled the room. Tiny beams of light shot into the air, forming a three-dimensional projection, stars, lines connecting them, routes she hadn't seen in years. The old network alive again in miniature. "It's impossible," she whispered. "Maybe not," Cal said quietly. "Maybe it was waiting for you." Alara stepped back, her eyes wide. The projection pulsed, as if recognizing her touch. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. "I don't understand," she admitted. I thought all of this was gone." "Some things never really disappear," Cal said, tipping his hat. "Sometimes they just wait for the right person to notice them." Elara stared at the glowing map, 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind. She had always believed that she was finished, that her skills, her knowledge, her existence, it all ended with the collapse. And yet, here was proof to the contrary. Something still needed her. Something still remembered her. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what could be. A network restored, people reconnecting, the frontier alive again, and maybe, just maybe, her life had not been meaningless. The wind picked up again, swirling dust across the observation deck. Cal didn't speak. He simply waited, as if he knew she needed to come to her own conclusion. Slowly, she nodded. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Maybe I can try," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Cal smiled. "That's all anyone can ask. One step at a time." He left soon after, disappearing into the desert night with a soft hum of his ship. And though the station returned to silence, the glow of the map remained. Elara stood alone, staring at the tiny network suspended in the air. It was fragile, incomplete, but it was alive. And so was she. For the first time in years, Elara Voss did not feel forgotten. She felt needed. She felt possible. She did not know where this journey would lead, or if she was ready to face what was coming. But as she watched the stars flicker above the station, she made a small, silent promise. She would try. Not for anyone else, not for the stars, but for herself. The frontier was waiting. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to answer. The morning sun rose over the desert plains, but on this forgotten planet, it was not golden or warm. It was pale and cautious, like a guest unsure if it should stay. Elara stood at the edge of the observation deck, the glowing star map hovering in front of her. Its tiny lines and points of light pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. She had barely slept. Her mind raced with questions. How had the network survived? Why had it chosen her? And most of all, could she really bring it back to life? Elara's fingers hovered over the map, tracing the glowing lines that connected the scattered dots. Each dot represented a station, a town, a person, a life that had once depended on her work. She had never realized just how many people had relied on her. Now, seeing it again, the weight of it pressed gently, not as fear, but as responsibility. A soft noise behind her made her spin. Calrook was back. His ship rested nearby, small and silent, like it had been waiting for her to notice. "You didn't wait for me," she said, her voice sharp, though there was no anger in it. "I didn't need to," Cal said with a grin. "I knew you'd touch the map, and when you do, things start moving." Elara frowned. "Moving? What do you mean?" Cal gestured to the projection. "See those dots?" He pointed at several small, flickering lights. "They're not just symbols. They're stations, towns, people, and they respond to signals, tiny ones, but signals nonetheless. Someone is listening. Someone is waiting." Elara's heart skipped. "Waiting? For me?" Cal shrugged. "Not just for you. For whoever can bring the network back. Whoever remembers." She stared at the map, hesitant. The idea that she could matter again, really matter, felt strange. She had spent so long believing she didn't. But seeing the tiny lights respond, she felt something like hope stir in her chest. "Where do I start?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Cal smiled faintly. "Anywhere, but I suggest starting with the closest stations. Test the signals, see who answers. Sometimes just letting someone know they're not alone is enough to start a chain reaction." And so, for the first time in months, Elara left the safety of her relay station. She climbed into her own small hover vehicle, its engines humming softly as she adjusted the coordinates Cal had helped her plot. The first destination was a small mining settlement 3 planetary hours away. The journey was silent, except for the soft hum of the engines and the occasional crackle of the map's projection. Each flicker of light on the device reminded her of something she had almost forgotten. Connection. That even in the vast emptiness of the frontier, someone, or something, was out there waiting for her touch. When she arrived at the settlement, it looked as abandoned as she had feared. Dust-covered buildings leaned at odd angles, rust ate at metal walls. The people she expected to find bustling through the streets were absent. And yet, when she projected a small signal from the map, tiny lights blinked back at her. She adjusted the frequency, repeating small, simple messages. Hello? Anyone here? Slowly, quietly, life stirred. A miner appeared from behind a collapsed structure, wiping sweat and dust from his face. Who's sending this? He asked, squinting at the holographic lines. Elara Voss, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I'm checking the old network, seeing who's still here. You're not alone. The miner's eyes widened, and he glanced around, as if realizing for the first time that he wasn't as isolated as he thought. I thought no one remembered this system. No one cared anymore. I remember, she said softly, and I'm here now. That was all it took. One by one, more people emerged from the ruins of the settlement, drawn by the soft, pulsing signal. Some had been hiding in fear, others in despair. They looked at Elara with curiosity, hope, and cautious disbelief. And though she felt small, almost fragile, she realized something astonishing. They believed in her, just as she was beginning to believe in herself. For hours she worked with them, repairing minor connections and sending out signals to neighboring stations. Each response she received made her pulse quicken. A small community in a distant orbital outpost sent back a blinking light and a message. We thought we were alone. Thank you for finding us. Elara felt tears prick her eyes. She had not realized the extent of her absence, the emptiness it had left. And now, seeing the lives she could touch, she felt the stirrings of something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. As the day faded into night, Cal approached quietly. She didn't even notice him at first, so focused was she on the network and the people around her. You did it, he said softly. I don't know, she admitted. It feels like I'm only doing a little. It's not enough. Cal shook his head. A little is all it takes. Small signals, small connections, they grow. That's how the frontier survives. That's how people survive. You didn't just fix machines today, Elara. You reminded people that they matter too. Elara looked at him surprised. But me? How can I matter after everything I've done wrong? You matter because you're still here, he said simply. Because you try, even when it's hard. You matter because you remember what others forget. She wanted to argue, to push away the warmth his words brought, but she couldn't. She felt it too strongly. For the first time in years, she felt seen. And maybe more importantly, she felt capable. The night stretched on. Elara and the miner worked together to repair a small communications hub, reconnecting it to the network. As they finished, the holographic map in her hands blinked with life, lines stretching across the frontier, reaching places she had never thought possible. Look at this, she whispered. It's alive. Cal stood beside her, his eyes reflecting the soft glow. It's more than alive. It's remembering. And every person you help makes it stronger. For a long while, they simply watched the network pulse with faint, steady light. Each flicker was a reminder that no one was truly alone. Each connection was a promise that the frontier, though vast and sometimes lonely, still held hope. As the settlement quieted and the stars emerged above the desert, Elara felt a calm she had not known in years. She was not finished. She was not forgotten. And for the first time, she truly believed she could make a difference again. The map glowed softly in her hands, projecting the small, flickering network across the empty sky. Somewhere out there, people were watching, listening, waiting. And for the first time, Elara was ready to answer. Tomorrow, she said quietly to herself, we go further. I'll be with you, not to lead, not to push, just to ride alongside. Elara nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. For the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of excitement. The frontier was vast. It was unknown. And yet, she was not afraid anymore. Somewhere beyond the horizon, stations waited. People waited, and she, Elara Voss, had the chance to bring them together. The desert winds whispered across the plains, carrying faint echoes of long-forgotten messages, and Elara listened, ready to speak back.
The frontier was beginning to remember.
And she was beginning to remember herself. The glow of the star map had become a steady presence in Elara Voss's life. Every morning she rose with it hovering beside her, each flicker of light reminding her of stations, settlements, and lives that waited for connection. It was more than a tool, it was a bridge, and slowly she was learning how to cross it. Today, however, the frontier felt different. The wind that swept across the desert plains carried more than dust. It carried the weight of expectation. As Alara climbed into her hover vehicle, Cal Rook's presence beside her offered both reassurance and silent challenge. He never pushed her. He never told her she could do it. He simply acted as though she could, and that alone was enough. "Where to today?" he asked. His voice was calm, measured, almost like he was reading the quiet of the desert itself. Alara studied the map. Several new stations had flickered to life overnight. Tiny lights blinked in response to the signals she had sent from the mining settlement. People were listening. People were waiting. "There," she said, pointing toward a cluster of dots near the edge of the system. "These settlements haven't seen anyone in years. If they respond, if they even answer, it could change everything." Cal nodded. "Then let's see if they do." The journey was longer than any she had taken before. The hover vehicle hummed over rocky canyons and wide plains that seemed to stretch endlessly. Sometimes the map flickered with activity, and Alara would steer toward it, hoping each flicker meant life, hope, or connection. When they arrived at the first settlement, it was eerily quiet. Houses leaned at odd angles, roofs caved in, and the streets were empty. The settlement had been abandoned long ago, or so it seemed. Alara took a deep breath and projected a simple message into the network. "Hello? This is Alara Voss. The network is coming back. You are not alone." For a moment, nothing happened. The desert wind whispered through the streets. Alara's heart sank. Had she been wrong? Had she misjudged this place? Then a faint response blinked back. A small light on the map pulsed steadily, and a soft voice came through the communicator. "Is it someone is really talking to us?" Alara's chest tightened.
"Yes," she said, voice firm but gentle.
"It's real. We're here. We're listening. You are not alone." Slowly, people began to emerge from their homes. Children peeked from behind doorways, elders stepped cautiously into the open, and a small group of settlers approached her with wary eyes. Their expressions were a mixture of disbelief and hope. Hope they hadn't dared to feel in years. Alara worked with them, teaching them how to reconnect minor systems, repairing broken antennas, and sending out signals to other nearby settlements. Every response she received made her pulse quicken. The network was growing faster than she had imagined. Cal watched silently, offering tools when she needed them and guiding her when a repair seemed impossible. He didn't lead. He simply reminded her that she could do it on her own. By nightfall, the settlements were alive again, at least in small ways. The map glowed with a network stretching across the horizon, faint lines connecting dots that once lay silent. The frontier was remembering, and Alara was at the center of it, but with growth came fear. As the network expanded, the weight of responsibility pressed heavier on her shoulders. Each new station connected meant more people depending on her, more lives waiting for guidance, more eyes watching her every move. She had thought helping a few settlements would be enough. Now she wondered if she could keep up. Sitting beside a small campfire, Alara stared at the flickering lights on the map. "I don't know if I can do this, Cal," she admitted, her voice quiet. "The more I connect, the more people rely on me. What if I fail? What if they realize I'm not enough?" Cal looked at her with steady eyes. "Listen, Alara, nobody expects perfection. The frontier doesn't need a hero. It needs someone willing to try. And that's exactly what you are doing." "I feel small," she whispered. "Like all of this is bigger than me. Then remember this," he said softly. "You're not doing it alone. Every person you connect, every light that blinks back at you, they help carry the load. You're not alone either." The truth of his words settled over her like a gentle breeze. She had spent so long believing she had no place in the universe, no reason to exist. But now, each response, each connection was a reminder that she mattered, not because she was perfect, but because she persisted. The next morning, the frontier greeted her with faint signals from beyond the settlements she had visited. Dots flickered on the map, each representing a life or a station that had yet to respond. Alara's fingers hovered over the projection. "We go further," she said, determination rising in her chest. Cal climbed into the hover vehicle beside her, silent support ready as always. Together, they traced the lines of the network, following the blinking dots to stations that had not seen life in decades. Some were abandoned towns floating in orbit. Others were hidden underground in asteroid colonies. Each place held stories waiting to be remembered, waiting for Alara to show them they were not forgotten. In one station, she found a community of traders who had given up hope after the network went silent. When she reached them, projecting her signals, the traders hesitated. "Why should we believe it works?" one of them asked, arms crossed and brow furrowed. "Because it already does," Elara said gently. She demonstrated the signal, connecting one settlement to another, showing them the growing network. "You are not alone. Others are listening. Others are waiting for you to join." Slowly, the traders began to repair their own stations. Small lights blinked across the network as they reconnected. The map pulsed brighter than before. The frontier was growing stronger. By the time the sun set, the stars above the desert sparkled in reflection of the network's glow. Elara and Cal stood silently, watching the lines stretch further across the frontier than she had ever imagined. "You're making a difference," Cal said quietly. "Even if you don't see it, it's happening." Elara nodded, but the worry lingered. The network was expanding rapidly, but she still felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. Each new station meant more lives to support. Each new connection meant more expectation. Could she truly handle all of it? That night, she dreamed of the network, of lines stretching endlessly, connecting stars and planets, lives and stories. In her dream, the lines flickered and pulsed, sometimes weakening, sometimes glowing bright. She woke with a start, heart pounding, realizing that the frontier itself depended on her willingness to continue. The next morning, she looked at Cal. "I know I have to keep going," she said. "But what if I can't do enough?" Cal tipped his hat, a faint smile on his face. "Then do what you've done all along. Take one step, one connection at a time. The frontier will answer, Elara. It always does. And so will you." Elara felt a spark of courage ignite within her. She had doubts, yes. She had fears, but she also had hope. And for the first time in years, she trusted herself to act on it. The frontier was alive. It was listening. And she, Elara Voss, was finally ready to answer. As she climbed into the hover vehicle, the star map glowing beside her, she knew that the path ahead would be long, challenging, and uncertain. But she also knew that she was not alone. And in the vastness of the frontier, that was enough. The lights of the network flickered like tiny stars scattered across the universe. Elara reached out and touched the map. Each connection, each signal, each life she reached reminded her that she mattered. She had been needed all along. She had only forgotten it. The frontier waited, patient and vast, and Elara, for the first time in her life, was ready to keep moving forward. The frontier had changed. Elara Voss looked out over the desert plains from the observation deck of her relay station, her eyes tracing the faint lines of light glowing in the distance. Each pulse on the star map represented a station, a settlement, a life she had touched. The network was no longer just a tool. It was alive, and it responded to her in ways she had never imagined. For months, she had traveled from settlement to settlement, bringing people back into the fold. She had learned their stories, their struggles, and their hopes. Some had been alone for decades. Some had believed they would never see another soul. And yet, each time she reached them, she saw a spark light up in their eyes. A spark she had not seen in herself for years. Cal Rook had been with her every step of the way. He never led, never told her what to do. He simply rode beside her, offering quiet guidance, tools when needed, and encouragement through small gestures. In the silence between them, there was understanding, a trust that they were both part of something bigger than themselves. "Are you ready?" Cal asked one morning, standing by the hatch of the hover vehicle. The twin suns were low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the plains. Elara adjusted the star map projection. The network had grown stronger, brighter, and more complex. Lights pulsed across distant settlements that had not been heard from in decades. "I think so," she said. Her voice was steady, even though her stomach fluttered with nerves. "It's time to bring everyone together." "To show them it all works?" Cal nodded. "Then let's ride." Their journey took them farther than ever before. They crossed dry riverbeds, rock-strewn plains, and endless dunes that shimmered like gold in the morning light. Each settlement they visited sent small pulses into the network, responding to Elara's signals. People came out of hiding, repaired antennas, opened communications panels, and worked alongside her to expand the web of connection. In one settlement, perched precariously on the edge of a canyon, a group of miners hesitated at first. They had been isolated for years, unsure if anyone would ever find them. But when Elara projected the map and explained the network, their eyes widened. Slowly, they began to set up relay nodes and reconnect their settlement. The lights blinked in response to others across the frontier, joining the growing chain of life and communication. "Look at them," Cal said softly, watching the miners. "They trust you." Elara smiled, though her heart thumped. I just show them the way. You do more than that, he replied. You remind them they matter. As the suns dipped below the horizon, Alara and Cal set up a temporary camp in the shadow of a canyon cliff. The glow of the network stretched across the star map, pulsing steadily like a heartbeat. It had taken months of work, patience, and quiet determination, but it was real. People were listening, responding, and participating. That night, as they sat beside a small fire, Alara reflected on how far they had come. She remembered the day Cal first arrived at her station, the day she touched the glowing star map for the first time. Back then, she had believed she had no reason to go on, no purpose, no place in the universe. And now the frontier was alive, and she had helped bring it back. She realized she had mattered all along. She had only forgotten. The next morning, she projected a system-wide message across the entire network. Her voice, calm and steady, echoed through the connected stations, reaching every settlement, every lonely outpost, every isolated soul. People of the frontier, she began, you are not alone. We are here. We are listening. And together, we can reconnect the places we have lost, restore the routes we have forgotten, and remember that each of us matters. The frontier is vast, but we do not face it alone. Every light you see on your map is a life reaching out, just as you are reaching out. And together, we continue. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then responses came, one by one, small lights blinking back across the map, voices joining her message, each repeating the truth she had come to know. They mattered. The frontier, once silent, was alive with hope. Tears pricked Alara's eyes. She had believed she was too small, too forgotten, too powerless. But here, in this vast network of blinking lights and voices, she understood that even one person could make a difference. Even someone who had thought they were lost could remind the world that it mattered too. Cal watched her quietly. You see now, he said softly. It wasn't just the network that needed you. You were needed too. And you are enough. Alara nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had spent so long thinking her life had no meaning, that her existence was pointless. But now, surrounded by signals, voices, and lives she had touched, she felt a profound truth. She mattered because she tried. She mattered because she stayed. She mattered because she remembered. And now she had reminded the frontier to remember too. The network pulsed like a living organism, each light and line reflecting a life she had helped touch. Alara realized that her journey was not over. It never would be. The frontier was too vast, too full of forgotten places. But now she did not feel alone. She had the network, she had the people, she had connected, and she had Cal riding beside her. As the twin suns rose again, painting the desert in soft gold, Alara projected a small map to a nearby settlement that had not yet joined the network. She adjusted the signal, projecting calm, steady encouragement. It's okay, she whispered.
You are not alone.
We are listening. Slowly, the settlement responded. A single light blinked on the map, then another, then several. Alara smiled, her heart racing with the joy of knowing that someone else had found hope. Cal placed a hand on her shoulder. This is only the beginning, he said. The frontier is big, but we can keep going. One connection at a time. Alara nodded. One connection at a time, she repeated. She looked out over the horizon, the desert plains stretching endlessly, dotted with settlements that now pulsed with life. The frontier was alive, and she had helped bring it back. As they prepared to move to the next settlement, Cal handed her a small, polished badge. She looked at it curiously. It's a courier badge, he explained. Not because you have to carry messages like I do, but because it reminds you belong. You've earned your place on this frontier. Alara's eyes glistened. She had spent so long thinking she was alone that she had no reason to keep going. But now, holding the badge, seeing the network pulse beneath her fingers, she knew the truth. She belonged. She mattered. And she would continue to matter every day she chose to ride forward. Together they climbed into the hover vehicle, the star map glowing between them. The frontier stretched out before them, vast, beautiful, and full of life waiting to be remembered. And for the first time in years, Alara felt not fear, but excitement. The journey ahead would be long. Some stations might be stubborn, some settlements slow to trust, some connections fragile, but she was ready. She had learned that even a single light could shine across the darkness, and now she would keep shining. The twin suns rose fully over the horizon, and the desert wind whispered through the canyon. Elara touched the map gently, feeling the pulse of countless lives responding to her signal. She smiled, a quiet, steady smile. The frontier was alive. She was alive. And together, they would continue to ride. The stars above flickered in approval, and the faint hum of the network grew louder, a song of hope, connection, and life. And in the midst of it all, Elara Voss stood tall, knowing she had finally found her reason to go on. She mattered, and she would continue to matter, for the frontier, for the people, and for herself.